Hello and welcome to Chapter 11, Learning from Failure from the Entrepreneurship, the Practice and Mindset, Second Edition textbook. Failure in entrepreneurship. Failure it's a necessity in the entrepreneurship world. It is very difficult for a startup to be successful for the long term, let alone for the year of the first few months. Failure is part of entrepreneurship. Failure is part of business. Failure is part of the startup world. Without failure, there is no success. You can look at the many successful entrepreneurs that you see on Forbes magazines, and if you watch or read any of their interviews, you will hear and read that the failure was part of the process. Let's just look at Mark Zuckerberg for example. Facebook wasn't his first company. He had dabbled in other things before, and Facebook hit because he learned from the failure. Right? It's important to know that many startups fail. It is a reality. So it's important to discuss this issue. Entrepreneurs who see failure as part of the journey bounce back quicker. Right? They see failure as part of the journey and having to learn from it, and they often feel more confident prepared to attempt another startup venture. Right? A business failure can be quite traumatic for an entrepreneur. There are people who have put in so much money, so much effort, so much emotional toll that they can't recover from it at times. And of course, even some people who put in their life savings or their emotional life savings, in a sense, lose out when the startup company is a failure. There have been stories out there the people who start companies, they get divorced, they lose contact with their kids. From some extreme factors, they lose everything from the business. So you have to be very careful when you launch into a business venture. It's just part of the process. Failure, of course, why people fail. There are things why there's failure, right? There's often a lack of market need. Some people just don't need your product or your service. Poor marketing. Probably you didn't market enough the product. Bad timing, right? Sometimes some startups have bad timing. Sometimes if you were too quick to the market or too late to the market. So you're going to have to learn that pivot is a need to turn small fails around quickly, and you're going to have to experience those quick fails in order to get back around and be successful. Pivots include making directional changes. So of course, it includes changing direction, such as the product, the customer segment, the revenue model, distribution channel. So you can learn from failure, these little mishaps in your company, and bounce back from it. So learning from small failures can nullify the risk of big failures. So learn from these failures and learn to learn quickly, learn to pivot quickly, and don't delve so much on the little mistakes that's going to make your company successful. I always say that be stubborn on the goal, but be flexible on the plan as to how you get to that goal. The failure spectrum ranges from small to big, right? Amy Edmondson from the Harvard Business School believes that failure ranges from big to small along a failure spectrum, right? So basically, Amy's spectrum of failures runs from blameworthy to praiseworthy. So blameworthy, for example, is entrepreneurs who violate rules and regulations are likely to have failed businesses and a tarnished reputation. So there is one thing to break the rules, but don't break the law, right? So or regulations. There are rules and regulations for a reason. In terms of regulations, don't break those regulations. You can break for example, somebody says, this particular product is probably not going to be good for this particular segment. Why? Because it's a rule. Well, maybe there is a time now to have this product or service for this particular market. But if there's regulations set in place, don't break them, because you're likely going to have a failed business. For example, there was this, well, a few years back, there was this company that started to, they had these built-in uh, devices, Bluetooth devices on their luggage bags, and the airline companies did not allow for these devices to be in the luggage bags, in the check-in luggage bags. And so, because that was a regulation, they basically had to do away with all their luggage bags. They're a business because they're basically worthless because you have to get rid of the Bluetooth device. Praiseworthy. Someone without the skills to do a job can get more training. Processes can be monitored and refined. Failed hypotheses and exploratory testing can be opportunities to expand knowledge. So, again, learn from it. Learn from the failure. Defiance, right? Defiance means defiance of ethical boundaries linked to venture mismanagement. So, of course, you have to be very careful with how you set the boundaries. For example, the famous example is Theranos, right? Theranos, the blood testing startup, is a good example that demonstrates defiance from the social norms. If you remember that company, it was a startup company, it was a blood testing startup company which had a tremendous amount of famous individuals on their board. It was eventually like, you have a little pinch, you pinch yourself and it could do blood tests like that just from a little pinch on your finger. And apparently it would do the blood testing for you. If you get a blood test, you have to go get a needle, get some blood sucked out. But this little pinch would be able to do the blood test. Of course, it was really misleading. As they were starting the company, people would see like it's not really possible, but it kept going and going and breaking all the rules and regulations. So eventually the business shut down. And of course, the co-founders or the founder of the company is in jail as of the recording of this. So that's a classic example. So it prompts to take the trauma out of blood testing by using a single drop of blood, again, by a machine. Of course, the company claimed that Edison could run 240 different blood tests, but only a few could actually be done. So again, the company was really nothing about it. So again, Elizabeth Holmes, the founder of this, and the president Ramesh Bhalwani were charged with fraud for making false claims about this product. Again, be very careful with how you, especially if you're in the biotech field and the medical field, if you're doing a startup there, or any startup in a sense, but be very careful as to how much you push the boundaries, and if you violate any regulations, you're going to get in big trouble. And of course, inattention, right, happens when delegating too much too soon without following up. Again, you have to follow up. Don't get sidetracked. Lack of ability. Entrepreneur lacks the skill set to get the job done. Again, that can happen in the job. It is common for companies to outgrow their founders because they lack the skills to get to the next level. So again, the thing with being part of a startup is that at the very beginning, the founder of the company can make it grow. At the point where the company grows very large, the startup founder may not have the intangible assets to grow the company. Therefore, someone else has to come and make it successful. So it's not uncommon to see a startup founder be kicked out of their own company that they started and have someone else grow the company. Process of inadequacy. Wrong processes are set up by the organization. Process of inadequacy of the wrong process set up the organization, so communication breaks down. So again, you just have to make sure there's communication. Without it, it's going to make it uncertainty it makes entrepreneur take unreasonable actions due to lack of clarity. Uncertainty of lack of clarity about future events can cause entrepreneurs to take unreasonable actions. So again, you have to really be very certain about your lack of clarity. And of course, exploratory experimentation, market test needed even though experiment may fail. So when we look at exploratory experimentation, some may fail, but exploratory is crucial for learning. So you're going to have to go out there and do it. For example, Joel Mertzel, the founder of Countertop Butter Dish Buttery, tested the market for her prototype by interviewing over 1,000 people waiting to board flights. So the results show that 60% of the respondents agreed that they would use a butter dish, which was enough proof to develop the viable product. So again, you have to go out and do some type of exploratory experimentation to do it. Failure view as a negative, not beneficial. We tend to view it as a negative, but you have to really look at it as a benefit to yourself. We tend to view it, it really is a learning tool. There's nothing that's going to help you more than failure. Anti-failure bias makes us avoid the learning we can gain from it, because some people react emotionally to failure, meaning that they'll never be able to get up or move forward, and that is contradictory. Folks who really are successful learn from failure, move on, and continue to move forward. You can't just let failure stop you. That's why it's okay to fail and learn from it and move on. So, signs of fear of failure, right? Origins lie in parents. So, something about the fear of failure really kind of goes back to when you're a child, right? Researchers have suggested that the origins of fear may lie in the parent-child relationship. A child is likely to have a higher fear of failure if that child is punished for failures and receives little or neutral praises for successful achievements. Of course, studies suggest a connection between high parental expectations and a child's fear of failure and parental absence. So, meaning that if your parents were extremely tough on you and had really they had no room for failure, and they punish you harshly for failure, that's really going to impact you later on in life. I've met people like that who feared failure and couldn't recover from it as an adult, and that's not good, right? Parents should be able to tell the child it's okay to fail and to learn from it and to move forward. People are raised to believe that failure is unacceptable, avoid at all costs, which of course causes danger. If you're going to avoid failure at all costs, it's sometimes going to make you do decisions that are probably unethical or against the law or against regulations. Of course, studies have shown that individuals raised to believe that failure is unacceptable and has a negative content will go out of the way to avoid failure. Again, that part of, getting into trouble with the law, perhaps. So you can't avoid. You got to begin developing coping strategies. Once you develop the extent of the fear of failure, you could begin to develop some coping measures, right? Again, you have to learn from it. If the product failed to generate as much revenue as you would like it, it is helpful to separate your personal feelings from facts. Again, you have to avoid that and grow from don't avoid failure, and learn from it. The GME measures fear of failure globally. It's a strong fear of failure is often rooted in the nation's culture. So the GEM stands for Global Entrepreneurship Monitor Report, measures fear of failure on a global level according to country. So the lowest is Angola and the highest is Morocco. Fear of failure was the lowest in Angola, followed by Colombia. The highest is Morocco, Greece, and India, and the U.S. is at 35%, which, the U.S., compared to other countries, of course, is not the highest fear of failure. The GA study focused on how people's perceptions influence decisions. So again, we're looking at how people's personal perceptions in three economies that influence their decisions to start a business: perceived opportunities, perceived capabilities, and fear of failure. How many people would feel constrained by their own fear of failing, and of course, their entrepreneurial intentions. So to the degree which is capable of starting a business, may intend to do so over the next 3 years. So it's important for entrepreneurs to learn from their failures. The reality is that businesses do fail, of course, which is important to learn from. If you know Jeff Bezos, for example, from Amazon, there were some failures within Amazon. Do you remember the Amazon phone, which was short-lived? It was a complete failure. And Jeff Bezos learned from it and moved on. So he's had some failures, right? Again, Jeff Bezos is a big believer in experimentation, especially when it comes to learning from failures. So he's famous for saying, "I made billions of dollars. I made billions of dollars of failures at Amazon. So billions of dollars." But he embraces it and learns from it, and of course continues to learn from his mistakes and move forward. Of course, failure should be seen as an intentional iteration, a process that involves prototyping and testing. So it would be better to reframe the term failure as intentional iteration. So again, you have to learn from it, prototype and test, and do some intentional groundwork to make sure you get it right. Lessons learned from successful entrepreneurs. So CEO of commerce firm Classy Llama is the 11th of 10 failed businesses over 5 years. So Kurt started 10 businesses, and the 11th one was his successful business venture. Even he left the 10 failures from behind him. He learned valuable lessons and preserved them to achieve success. So if it's not one startup, continue to move forward, and eventually you'll hit gold, right? Building a blame-free environment. Blame-free culture isn't healthy. A blame culture isn't healthy for you and your company simply because you won't learn from the failure. Building blame-free cultures is needed, right? So encourage people to share, accept, learn from, and recover from failure is needed. So you have to build the blame-free culture. You can't have a blame culture. You have to build a blame-free. So learn from it and move forward. Employees need to feel assured of no negative reactions when admitting to a mistake. If you have to let people feel free to learn from failure and to not be severely punished for their mistakes. Learn from them and continue to move forward. Employees in a startup would also need to feel assured that they will not receive a negative reaction when they make mistakes. So no negative comments when someone admits their failure. The key here part is clear communication on acceptable and unacceptable failures, right? I think you have to set the boundaries of what's acceptable and what's unacceptable failures. For example, lack of commitment, reckless conduct, violation of the law or standards, negligence, or wasting resources will be deemed unacceptable. Whereas on the other hand, small fails that tend to occur through experimentation will be regarded as acceptable. So again, you have to set those boundaries. So again, acceptable would be, small fails. Oh, you know what? I used the wrong color on this marketing scheme, or you know what? I did a little too much on this part and I learned from my mistake. I need to do better with the wording on it. Unacceptable would be like, hey, you know what? You completely went reckless. You broke the law. You knew you were doing something wrong. You wasted precious resources on purpose. That's unacceptable. Again, that traditional wisdom, talent predicts achievement. Traditional wisdom, traditional wisdom leads us to believe that talent is a predictor of achievement, and that is probably the opposite of truth. Talent is not enough. You have to have some grit. You have to have the work ethic. There's a lot of talented people out there who have amazing talent, but without a heavy, good work ethic, they're not going to achieve much success. Talent is only going to get you so far in startups or even in life. You can only rely so much on talent, but you have to put in the work ethic into it. One of the things is grit. Grit is the quality that enables people to work hard and sustain interest. So there's this famous psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania named Angela Lee Duckworth who wrote about this grit. And grit is the quality that enables people to work hard and sustain interest in their long-term goals. One of the things about is growth mindset versus fixed mindset, right? A fixed mindset avoids failure. The growth mindset learns from setbacks. So have a growth mindset, right? Learn from failures and continue to move forward. That's probably one of the best ways to be successful. Have a growth mindset. Deliberate practice is the key to success. So continue to practice, and deliberate practice, which is the conscious effort to practice that we can't yet do. So practice, 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 and continue to move forward. Don't let failure be part of failure is part of the process. So continue to move forward. Building grit. It's not easy to build grit for some folks. People have it within them. Others, they need to build it. So, again, courage, no fear of failure. In the context of grit. So again, overcome that fear of failure. Conscientious, working despite challenges. So you're gonna have challenges ahead of you. Go through them. Perseverance, commit to the long term. So always commit to the long term. Resilience, recovering from failure and overcoming obstacles. You're gonna have it. You just continue to move forward. Excellence, committing to activities that enhance skills. So again, prioritizing improvement over perfection. So you don't have to be perfect, but you have to show improvements and strive for that. Removing this, so we have to remove that part of failure, that stigma of failure, that failure is bad. Failure is good in a sense. Failure makes us learn from our mistakes and to move forward. The key is not to fail the same way again and again and again. If you continue to fail the same way, like, all right, we got to change something up. So again, you fail and learn and move forward. So I highly encourage you to, if you're going to go into the startup world, don't let it stop you. Continue to move forward. Build grit, build a growth mindset, and you will see successes. If it's not this one, it'll be the next one or the next one. So continue to move forward, learn from failure, and continue to move forward. So this was Chapter 11, Learning from Failure, from the Entrepreneurship, the Practice and Mindset, 2nd edition textbook.